Imagine this. You're 12 years old, a skinny kid from a tiny mountain village somewhere in Bulgaria. The year is 1550. Morning fog crawls through the valley like ghostly fingers. You're out there with your father, herding sheep. The soft clang of bells around their necks, that sound, it is your childhood. It's your safety. It's home. Back at the house, your mother is making breakfast, warm bread, fresh goat's milk. The smell wraps around you like a hug. For a moment, the world feels simple, perfect. Then, hoofbeats, thunder on cobblestones. Your father's face drains white. Your mother drops the clay bowl in her hands, shatters on the floor. You don't need anyone to explain. Everybody knows what this means. The tax riders are here. No, worse, the collectors. You hide behind the wooden cart as they arrive, Ottoman officers in flowing silk robes that somehow look spotless, even after days on the road. Scrolls, ledgers, eyes like cold steel, scanning the villagers not like people, but like livestock. One of them stops, points, straight at you. Your mother falls to her knees, begging in a language they don't care to understand. Your father stands frozen. He knows. Everybody knows. Fight, and the entire family dies. Submit, and you lose a piece of your soul. They rip you away with hollow promises. You'll serve the great sultan. You'll be honored. You'll become something more. But as the wagon rattles down the mountain, leaving behind everything you've ever known, all you can hear is your mother's cries fading into the fog. You will never see her again. This is how your life as a child of the empire begins. A ghost inside the world's most powerful machine. And whatever horrors wait behind the marble gates of the palace will make you long for the quiet, foggy mornings with the sheep. The road to Istanbul is your first real lesson in cruelty. You and dozens of other boys are marched for weeks across brutal terrain. No beds, barely any food, no mercy. The weak, the ones who stumble, who collapse from fever, hunger, or heartbreak, left behind, forgotten, food for the crows. You learn quickly. Kindness doesn't exist here. Only survival does. There's a boy next to you, Nikos, maybe 14. Taken from a fishing village far away. He whispers that soon, even his name will be forbidden. On the third night, he tries to run. He barely makes it a mile. The guards drag him back, bloodied and broken. They make everyone watch. His screams split the night wide open, and when it's over, nobody says a word. Not even him. That's when you understand the rules. Escape isn't possible. Mercy isn't real. And if you want to live, you become invisible. A shadow. Speak only when spoken to. Breathe only when allowed. By the time Istanbul's skyline cuts the horizon, its towers, its domes like the teeth of some monstrous beast, you've already changed. You've seen boys vanish. Some ran. Others just broke. Their absence in the line is a constant reminder. Today it's them. Tomorrow, it might be you. The first glimpse of Istanbul's skyline should have been breathtaking. Majestic domes stabbing into the sky, the mighty silhouette of Hagia Sophia, the endless sprawl of the palace that on any other day might have seemed like paradise, but all you felt was dread, a hollow, sinking stone in your stomach. This city, this empire, was both everything you feared and everything you were now a part of, whether you wanted it or not. The moment the gates opened, the real nightmare began. The surviving boys, filthy, starving, exhausted, were lined up like cattle at a market. This wasn't a welcome. This was inspection. Brutal. Dehumanizing. Guards pried open your mouth to check your teeth like you were a horse, measured your arms, prodded your muscles, checked your skin for scars and imperfections, studied your face the way an art collector sizes up a sculpture. Not looking for beauty, looking for value. Strong enough for the army, smart enough for the court. Too small, useless, move. The best, if that word even means anything here, were selected for the palace school. A place whispered about like both a dream and a curse. The rest, sent to the barracks to become soldiers, or worse. When they grabbed your arm, scribbled your name on the ledger, the officer smiled. Not the smile of kindness, the smile of a hunter who's just caught something rare, something useful. Something that doesn't yet understand it's trapped. The school had a name, Enderin. They called it the world's first institution for the gifted. Sounds noble, but behind the marble walls, that word meant something else entirely. Gifted didn't mean privileged. It meant reshaped, remade, whether you wanted it or not. Yes, you were taught languages, math, astronomy, law, poetry, music, calligraphy, but knowledge wasn't the real lesson. No, the real education was obedience, submission. the art of disappearing into whatever shape the empire wanted you to be. The dormitory became your tomb. Long, narrow rows of silk-covered beds lined up like cages dressed in luxury. Thick walls sealed you away from the outside world, from freedom, from the person you used to be. That first night, you lay awake, listening. Not to silence, never silence. The muffled sobs of boys trying not to cry, whispered prayers in languages you didn't understand. Footsteps in the hall, some soft, some heavy, belonging to older students, or worse, supervisors. Predators in this marble maze. Your hand gripped tight around the wooden cross your mother pressed into your palm before they tore you away. It was small, pathetic maybe, but it was hers. It was home. It was you. You fell asleep with it clutched to your chest. At sunrise, it was gone, confiscated, stolen, along with your real name, gone, forever. From this day forward, you were no longer yourself. You were given a new name, Mesmet, a name soaked in the Empire's language, a name that didn't belong to the boy from the foggy hills. Conversion wasn't optional. It was the first brick in the wall that would become your new identity. The ceremony was grand, gold, silk, incense, as if you had chosen this life. But everyone knew. This wasn't a choice. It was a sentence dressed as a celebration. You mouthed the words. You repeated the prayers. On the outside, compliant. On the inside, you still whispered your mother's lullabies, your father's stories. You held on to them, for now. But the most dangerous part wasn't the loss of your past. It was the quiet war being waged against your will, against your soul. The palace was a machine designed to grind down individuality and forge obedience. Advancement didn't depend on knowledge alone. No, it depended on favor, and favor came at a cost. Sometimes in the form of a smile, sometimes in ways no child should ever have to learn. Your first real lesson in how the palace actually worked didn't come from a teacher. It came from Amit, an older student who'd been surviving this place for 3 years. One evening, you found him sitting casually at the edge of your bunk. His posture was relaxed, too relaxed. His tone? Smooth, friendly almost. But beneath it, there was an edge, a quiet warning. "You're new," he said flatly. Not a question, a fact. His eyes scanned you like a merchant evaluating something valuable. "You don't really get how things work around here, but I can help. I can teach you, protect you." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The instructors listen to me. They trust my recommendations." His hand landed on your shoulder, heavy, deliberate. You froze. You were 12, and every instinct inside you screamed that something about this felt wrong. Then Amit leaned in, voice dropping to a near whisper. "But you should know, nothing in this place is free. There are ways you can show appreciation, ways boys like you earn protection." He didn't need to explain further. The meaning hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. This was the reality every boy in the palace eventually faced. A cruel choice. Refuse and risk isolation, harsher punishments, and the end of any chance at advancement. Or comply and surrender parts of yourself not because you wanted to, but because the system demanded it. The palace had its own unwritten economy. A hierarchy powered not just by merit or discipline, but by unspoken favors, loyalties, and quiet transactions. It was a predator's ecosystem dressed up as tradition. The eunuchs, once boys themselves, taken from their homes, held enormous power here. Some had become the most ruthless enforcers of the very machine that had shaped them. They knew how the game worked. Many weren't victims anymore, but architects of the system. Older students targeted the younger ones. It was a cycle. Those who suffered often grew into the next generation of gatekeepers. Because in this marble prison, pain wasn't just endured. It was passed down, normalized, expected. Even the most refined officials, the men in silk robes who stood beside the sultan, played their part. Some boys, those considered exceptionally promising, whether for their intelligence, appearance, or talents, found themselves offered special attention, special favors. It came with protection, but also expectations. And this wasn't whispered in shadowed corners. No, this was how the palace functioned, woven deep into its marble walls and daily life. So common, it barely felt like a secret. Those who played the game right, they were rewarded. Better food, softer beds, tutors, faster advancement. Those who resisted found themselves pushed aside, disciplined, or simply quietly erased from the ranks. For a kid like you, the psychological toll was crushing. Stripped of your name, your family, your past, left in a world where even your future wasn't really yours, unless you could outmaneuver the system that wanted to remake you. Some kids adapted, learned how to perform, how to smile when it mattered, how to leverage their talents, whether academic or otherwise. Others? They broke, shutting down completely, becoming hollow shadows of themselves, ghosts, trapped in human form. You saw it happen, right in front of you. Dmitri, a boy who arrived the same week you did, figured it out fast. Within 6 months, he'd mastered the game, learned the right smiles, the right compliments, always charming, always agreeable. He had new clothes, better meals, a private language tutor, a fast track, at a cost everyone understood. But no one dared speak aloud. By the 3rd month, you stopped wondering if anyone was coming to save you. Nobody was. The boy you once were, fading, bit by bit, day by day. Dmitri, the kid who learned to play the game, his eyes weren't the same anymore. They still blinked, still looked, but they were empty, hollow. When new boys arrived, he didn't smile. He didn't offer comfort. No, he scanned them the same cold, calculating way the officers once scanned him, like inventory, like livestock. The boy who once spoke of his mother never spoke of family again. Not everyone chose that path. Stephanos, a Greek boy, son of a fisherman, refused the smiles, refused the whispers, refused the help, and the palace made him pay. Beatings, starvation, isolation, until one day, he simply started disappearing. Not physically, piece by piece, spirit, mind, fire, gone. He did his chores, memorized his lessons, but his eyes stared through walls, through people. Until one morning, his bunk was empty. No goodbyes, no whispers, and nobody dared say his name again. You tried something different. A middle path. Play the game, just enough to survive, just enough to stay invisible, while keeping some piece of yourself hidden deep where they couldn't reach. But the palace wasn't designed for that. No, the palace was a machine built to crush middle ground. Every day, it forced a choice: become what they wanted or break. There was no third option. Sometimes, outsiders caught glimpses of this hidden world. European visitors, ambassadors, traders, tourists. Their journals survive, half horrified, half fascinated by what they saw but barely understood. One Venetian ambassador wrote about the peculiar fondness Ottoman officials had for their young male servants, described scenes that made his skin crawl. Boys, no older than 10, dressed in silk, adorned with gold, serving men far older, with a level of intimacy that went far beyond simple servitude. A French diplomat a century later was more blunt. He wrote about receptions where boys floated through the palace like exotic birds, eyes downcast, bodies polished and decorated, but shoulders tense, jaws tight, their movements graceful, rehearsed, but haunted. And the way certain men reached for them, with the casual entitlement of someone picking fruit from a tree they owned. And the flicker, the flash of pure animal fear in the boys' eyes when they saw him coming. Life here wasn't just physically brutal. It was psychological warfare. You lived crammed into dormitories with no privacy, watched, listened to, controlled, woken before dawn, ordered to pray, whether you believed or not, fed, but never enough. Marched through schedules so rigid, so suffocating, there was no space left to think, no time to remember who you used to be. Punishment? Oh, it was never just pain. It was humiliation. Carefully crafted, designed to not just hurt your body, but shatter your soul. Speak your native language? Caught practicing your old religion? Showing homesickness, disobedience? You'd face the whip, public ridicule, or worse, locked naked in a stone cell barely wide enough to lie down for days. You watched it happen, Milos, caught whispering prayers from his old faith. The next day, forced to stand naked in the courtyard under the brutal sun all day, while the other boys were encouraged, ordered to laugh, to mock, to throw scraps at him like he was an animal. The lesson? Clear. Your old self wasn't just forbidden, it was shameful. And then there was the shadow economy, the trade of survival. Privileges weren't given, they were bought, with obedience, with performance, with other things. A better mattress, cleaner clothes, extra bread, access to books, to music, to safety. Everything had a price, and the currency was submission. The palace had turned itself into a perfect prison, not made of stone, made of dependency, loyalty, fear. You learned fast, learned how to play their game with the sharp mind of someone far older than your 12 years. You learned that helping older students with their studies earned protection from other things. Every favor was a negotiation. Every smile, a contract. Every silence, a survival tactic. Because here, even silence could be traded. You figured it out pretty quick. Talent was currency here. Show them you were brilliant at languages, math, or strategy, and suddenly, doors opened. Teachers who ignored others started noticing you, protecting you. Because in this world, being useful was the closest thing to being safe. Perfect obedience, exaggerated enthusiasm for your new life, it could buy you small freedoms. And here, those small freedoms felt enormous. A warmer blanket, a softer voice, a day without fear. But never mistake it, the cage was still a cage. You watched others try to escape. A boy tried swimming across the Golden Horn one night. You were there, standing with the others when they dragged his broken, shivering body back through the palace gates. What they did to him was designed to be remembered. His screams, his shattered limbs, his limp frame became a living warning. A reminder that no one escapes this place alive. And for the handful that did, freedom wasn't what they imagined. They'd been here too long, their old selves erased. Home wasn't home anymore. Families barely recognized them. Some refused to, branded as traitors, apostates, or worse, tools of the enemy. Out there, they had no trade, no skills, no place. The truth hit harder than chains. There was no going back. As you grew, surviving through a calculated balance of submission and sharp adaptation, the palace threw new horrors your way. New tests, new choices, new ways to break you or rebuild you into something else entirely. Here's the darkest truth. The men who shaped you, controlled you, hurt you, molded you, were once boys, just like you, torn from their families, reconstructed into weapons of the empire. And now, you stared at the same choice they once faced: resist and risk being crushed, or embrace it, become one of them. Not just a survivor, but an enforcer, a gatekeeper, a builder of the very machine that destroyed you. Many chose the second because becoming the predator felt easier than being prey forever. And then came the ceremony, the chikma. Graduation, the day the empire stamped you complete. No longer a boy, no longer property. Now a servant of the Ottoman state, an official, a soldier, a diplomat. Whatever the empire needed, you walked out fluent in languages, master of numbers, skilled in diplomacy, music, strategy, an educated man. Polished, refined. But underneath the silk robes was something else. Something harder, colder, something broken. Because the same system that taught you art and science had also hollowed you out, rewired your understanding of power, of relationships, of what it meant to survive. And now, whether you became a court official or an elite soldier, those lessons came with you forever. The administrators, the civilized face of empire, entered a world where favors, obedience, and darker transactions were still woven into the fabric of power. A game of politics dressed in silk, but played with the same rules of survival you learned as a child. The military men, they carried their scars into battle. Some became ruthless enforcers of the sultan's will, as brutal as the world that raised them. Others, simply shattered, wandering through life as empty men. Broken minds and unbreakable armor. And the empire, the brilliant, ruthless machine that made you, pretended none of this existed. They wrote poetry about beauty, built marble palaces that touched the sky, hosted visiting dignitaries with elegance and grace, while burying the broken souls beneath the gold and silk. To the outside world, the Ottoman Empire was magnificent. But you knew the truth. Magnificence, built on bones. The palace system wasn't designed for kindness. It was a machine, a brutal, efficient factory built to turn kidnapped boys into perfect servants of the empire. Diplomats, advisors, commanders. And the price? Their humanity was considered irrelevant. Any whispers of cruelty, any criticism from outsiders was brushed aside. You simply don't understand our sophisticated ways. That's what they said. That's what they always said. Even Ottoman scholars, those loyal to the empire, sometimes admitted the cost. One court historian in the 1700s wrote, "Yes, the palace requires tremendous sacrifice, but from this crucible, the empire's finest are forged." Poetic, isn't it? But that poetry was a mask to hide what the system really was. A machine designed to erase the boy you were and rebuild you into something useful, something obedient, something profitable. The education? Undeniably brilliant. You learned languages that opened the entire known world. You mastered mathematics, astronomy, diplomacy, strategy. But that same system carved away at you. Piece by piece, until the innocent kid who once herded sheep in the mountains was a ghost. A memory. Gone. The same teachers who unlocked your mind also locked away your past. The same halls that taught you logic taught you how power works, how submission works, how survival sometimes means becoming exactly what you once feared. And the darkest part? This wasn't a secret. It wasn't hidden in shadows. It was the system. Praised, celebrated, protected by those who thrived within it. Yes, the Ottomans weren't unique. Versions of this existed in Rome, in Persia, in kingdoms across the medieval world. But here, it wasn't some underground practice. It was institutional, open, and ruthlessly efficient. By the 17th and 18th centuries, cracks started to form. Gunpowder, new ways of warfare, new models of government. Slowly, the palace system became obsolete. Slowly, the world began to change. But for the thousands of boys who passed through those gates during its peak, those changes came far too late. For them, the damage was done. Some climbed higher than anyone thought possible. Grand viziers, generals, governors, architects of the empire itself, men who shaped history. But even in their finest robes, beneath the jewels and titles, they carried scars. Scars no rank could erase. Some couldn't carry it. They vanished, faded into the forgotten corners of history. No stories, no monuments, just names on old ledgers. Boys turned tools, then discarded. And the empire? It moved on. Golden, magnificent, powerful, built on art, on science, on conquest, and on bones.